Welcome to Carefree and Conscious with me, Susanne Wilson, the Carefree Medium. On today's show, our guest host is Diane Calderon. Here's a question for you. Have you ever used a Ouija board, or it's also known as the talking board or spirit board? Did it frighten you? Well, you're going to want to tune in for today's guest. Karen A. Dahlman, M.A., is an author, paranormal researcher, licensed counselor, and spirit communicator. She serves as an officer and director of the Talking Board Historical Society. She was born gifted, and she communicates with sentient beings in the unseen dimensions and uses these gifts with her clients, providing spiritual readings and guidance. She's an author of several books, and her most recent book is a channeled work through her cat, Jack, called When Cats Had Wings. And now, Carefree and Conscious, the truth about Ouija boards and channeling.
Okay, so Karen Dahlman has been doing a lot of work in channeling and working with the spirit boards, decades of work, and she's written several books. How about, Karen, you give us a quick rundown on your background and what you've been doing, and we'll go from there.
Sure. So, as Diane mentioned, I've been using spirit boards for quite a few years. I'm on my 50th year. This makes it 50. I started in 1973. Behind me and around me, I have oodles of boards. I have shelves going up and shelves going out. I have at least 35 boards behind me and around me, and a lot more. I collect them. I'm a collector. I'm part of the Talking Board Historical Society. I'm a director there and also an officer. So I'm into collecting, but my big thing is using the board. This is my form of channeling. So I really wanted to talk to everybody here about different ways of channeling, and that using the board is no different than maybe, for example, using a crystal ball for scrying, or maybe using tarot or oracle cards. So that's my background, has been using the board for all these years. I must add that I came into this world at a very young age, being able to see spirit. And what I had as a child from the age of 2 to 5 was what they call an imaginary playmate. But it was not imaginary. And I was told to not speak to things that weren't there if I'm going to be a big girl and go to school. So I pretty much thought I shut all that down, and because just kind of being forced to shut it down, as many of us have a similar story. But what happened was, and at the age of 8, I was gifted a Ouija board from Santa Claus. So, excuse me, for me, using a board, there was no shame or fear about it. I was a practicing Catholic. I would go to church and then come home and use the board. There was no blasphemy for me. With this, it just was another way to connect with spirit, as we were being taught that many of the saints connected with spirit too, or angels. So my odyssey with the board has been many years. It's been all enlightening, exciting. I've been gifted many messages that have helped my clients and also to help me write my books. Most of my books are written with the help of spirit, other than the book I wrote, which is The Spirits of Ouija, which is really about my odyssey of 40 years when I wrote this book. I just released a children's fully illustrated book. It's called When Cats Had Wings, because I channel not only what you would consider spirits, or ethereal beings or angels or interdimensional, ultradimensional beings, I channel animals. And so one of my cats worked with me and co-wrote this book, gave me the storyline, and then gave me poetic license to take that story and to put it in a format that I felt was right, which became a poem. But Jack the cat and I wrote this book. He started when he was very much in physical form and finished it in spirit. And so I have communicated with quite a few animals who have crossed over. But I also got to tell you, when I use this tool, the talking board, spirit board or Ouija board, you can use it to talk to the consciousness of any type of sentient beings. That's a lot I unfolded there. So maybe Diane has some questions to ask about that.
Well, I do. So you were connecting with your cat when the cat was still here in physical form. Were you doing the connecting using the Ouija board, or was that just a tool that helped open that process?
So how it worked with Jack in this case, he just started talking to me telepathically. When I was petting him, he started giving me words in my mind, and I knew they weren't mine. I've learned to discern when my spirit guides come through, and I can hear them as like downloads of thoughts or feelings, and they become words, and it comes so quickly. But Jack had come that way first, although I had been speaking with him on the talking board, that I just went ahead and went to the board, and he channeled the story either telepathically, also a little bit in dreams, because that's how I finally got the way I was going to write this book. It came to me in a dream, but also he spoke to me through the board. So when I say through the board, it's not like the cat gets in the board and there's energy in there. It's that it's a way, my form, or as Clyde Lewis likes to call it, my theatrics to my channeling. So we all have our own way of bringing in the information, just that I use the board as a display of the movements happening as I'm getting the words and letters.
Okay, another question. You started using the board when you were 8, you said, a gift from Santa. When did you recognize channeling the other realms, the other consciousness, as part of that process at the early age of 8, or did it take time for that to come into your awareness?
That's a wonderful question, because there definitely was a progress of using this tool. When I first got it, and I had the box. I still have the box. It's on my shelf. I keep boxes to you guys, because that's part of being a collector, the way the boxes change along with the boards. So the box said on the back of it, and if any of you have a board, you know what I'm talking about. It said use with male, female, preferably male, female, and sit across from each other. So I thought I had to use it with my brother, and then I just had this weird paradigm or rules I thought I had to follow, which included you can only use the board to talk to the deceased, which they're very much not dead. So I hate using that word. So you'll hear me use the word transitioned. So the people that have transitioned, I thought that's all you're supposed to use it with. And it wasn't until I went to college and then graduate school when I started. I'm a trained psychotherapist and also licensed psychotherapist. That was my background for college or graduate school. So I was studying Carl Jung, and Carl Jung is like my favorite psychologist. And he talked about the collective unconscious and archetypes. And he also talked about the ability to connect with one of the archetypes, which is your higher self, which we all have this within us, and actually it's beyond us. It's beyond our corporeal existence. So this higher self, that I thought, why don't I start using the board to connect with this aspect of myself that's not only me, but greater than myself and wiser than this, ego self, conscious self. But let's go into some other areas of consciousness. And so I brought in 2 of my friends who were very much into exploring and wanted to use this tool as well. And we thought, let's do an experiment. And we did it for about 4 years. And I do write about it in my book, The Spirits of Ouija, because it was very fascinating. Because once I started talking to the higher self, Diane, that is when the connection occurred to all these other dimensions. So how it goes is this: we would sit there and ask to speak to our higher self. Now, I got to tell you guys, to use this tool, you really got to step into more of the right brain creative way of thinking than being very logical. If you're logical, it's just not going to work, because you're tapping into, when you channel, you're tapping into a whole nother avenue of yourself that's very open, flowing. You don't judge it. You have to allow it. So I was already doing that, because at that point, it was 1989. I had already been using the board for 16 years. So my friends were also about in their mid to late 20s. And we said, let's really explore the higher self-consciousness and how we can use it in our lives. And so that's what we did. And so we got on the board our higher selves talking to ourselves, giving us inspiration and ideas and guidance for our life. Not only was this 3 of us humans sitting there in the room channeling, there was the 3 beings, which was our higher selves working with us too. I know this gets really woo-woo, but this is how it works. So when you start tapping into the higher self, that taught me in that moment that was such a powerful thing to use, meaning powerful to start connecting with my higher self. And since then, Diane, over the last 30 plus years, I have been really working with trying to help people tap into their higher selves on and off the board. Because here's the odyssey. Here's the story. Once we tapped into the higher self back in 89 for about 4 years, we started meeting other beings through this form of channeling. We had angels coming through. We even had extraterrestrials that we would call it that. I should say they don't really call themselves that, interdimensionals or interdimensionals or extra beings from other worldly places started coming through. Now, at that time, there was no internet. The internet came out later. It was in infancy with dial-up AOL. So it wasn't like I was able to research this stuff on social media, but they started telling me things like the planet Maldek and Mars, and they got in a fight. And I was like, what is all this? It was a little too much for me to understand, but I wrote copious notes. I have everything written down, you guys, since about 86. So we started talking to those beings. Then I started meeting ethereal beings, and the ethereal beings were saying such high level ideas of wisdom or teachings of the wisdom of the ages, information that we probably should not have known, but it's not that it's taboo, but stuff like information that would really support some of the theories and also dispel some of the theories, like about ancient cultures. We were learning some really fascinating stuff, not unlike tapping into the Akashic records. So at that point, then I met these group of beings, which is now a collective group I call the guides. And this is who I channel directly this way and also through the board. When I say through the board again, that's tongue in cheek. It's really me channeling them, and the board becomes a display. But this is the group of beings that have been with me now since 1994. But having made the connection to my higher self, it allowed me and the people that I was working with at that time to open up and tap into other realms of consciousness and other beings that have our best interest at heart. Now, it's always been very positive for me. We could get into why that was, and I have a better understanding now. But the sweetest, Diane, the sweetest beings that I ever met, well, the guides are great, were the animals. So this is what happened. This is how I got into, and Diane, I know you love your animals. I love my animals too. This is how I got into channeling this book. Oh, this book just came out a month ago, you guys. What happened was this. I was working the board, talking to my angel. Her name's Mary. I still work with her all the time. And she said, "You're not going to believe this." Now, she's spelling it out on the board. "You're not going to believe who wants to talk to you." I'm like, bring it on. I mean, I talk to all kinds of beings. Of course, I'm going to believe it. She goes, "No, you're not going to believe this one." So my partner and I had our fingers on that planchette, that little indicator that moves around the board, and it goes a different direction, and it slows down, and it spells out, "Hermes cat, I love you." Now, I had a very much alive cat in this dimension, sitting in a rocking chair, sitting there just looking right at us. And I said, "What? The cat talks?" And she said, "Well, I told you you're not going to believe this, but yes." And how it works is no different than an animal communicator. We get their impressions, their words, and then we channel it with you through the board. So you're getting the download of the information. It's just coming through the board. We help them with the expression or their intentions. And at that point, that was my cat, Hermes, that taught me all about animal communication. And ever since then, I've been using it and doing it with all of my cats, many different animals, and even wild animals if they choose to talk. So that was the progression. The answer was, once you get into tap into the higher self, doesn't mean it has to be on the board. Okay, because I teach how to do this without using the board. Once you open yourself up to this higher level, greater level of consciousness, you can then navigate other sentient beings and have those dialogues and communications if you so choose.
Wow. That's just like fascinating to me.
It's fascinating to me too, I gotta tell you.
Yeah. So a question I would have is, if you can tap into other sentient beings, you're tapping into a collective consciousness. Does that include people who are living now? Can you tap into, say, someone like me and my higher self through the channeling? Or are we talking about sentient beings as those who are basically not in the human form, or they're in the spirit realm?
Well, you bring up a great question, because that has to do with free will. So people say, "Oh, well, tap into my higher self." And I'll say, "Well, you have to give me permission, and you have to want that to happen and believe it can happen too." Now, having said that, I have spoken to relatives. There was a couple that were in a coma, and one was facing her end of life. And so because we had that relationship, she was my aunt, I was able to tap into what she was experiencing and bring forward some information where she was ready to let go and to move on into the next dimension, but her family was holding her back. And so I got that message, but not everybody wants to hear that stuff, but you can tap into living beings. Okay, now here we go. If you can tap into living beings, let's say Diane's higher self, which can happen, and if she gets permission and she's willing to allow that to happen. There's always an if, because there's free will. You can tap into the consciousness of any sentient being. Now let's think about, what does that mean? Sentient beings, everything that is this biological creation is alive with awareness. It may not be awareness, or I would say we skew it and think it's not alive or has an awareness because it doesn't communicate like us. Doesn't mean we're more intelligent, it just means it has its own form of intelligence and its own way of communication. The reason why I'm bringing this up is because you can actually tap into the consciousness of trees, Gaia, stars, animals, wild, insects, reptiles. You can tap into anything that has a consciousness and awareness. And this is nothing new. It's just the way I'm doing it. It kind of seems strange and new because I'm using a Ouija board, or sometimes I get direct downloads. I'm better with the other energies, such as the animals, and also, I mentioned the trees and vegetation and earth, and through the board, because I'm so good at using the board. But people can do it without the board, and I can do it a little bit. I'm still working on that, because you have to really be open to this and be willing to meet them where they are, where their awareness is. Meaning it may not come in the way I want it to come, may not come in the words and thoughts and feelings that I get from the animals. It's going to come a little differently. And myself learning to discern and interpret that. But this is nothing new under the sun. The ancient cultures knew this. I love the Native Americans from the United States. I actually love them all the way through South America, and I studied all these different cultures. Where I live in Arizona is the Hohokam, or the Tohono, but they were originally called the ancient one, the Anasazis. And I have a great connection and affiliation to them. I have a spirit guide that I work with that I met here out hiking that came to me, and I started drawing them. And I know I've talked to Susanne about it before, and she and I have done some work channeling with him. But it's fascinating because you can do this work through the tool, off the tool, but it's all through our intentions, and you can tap into these consciousness of beings that could be in other dimensions too. So when I start talking about the stuff, you have to really have an open mind. And if you want to do it yourself, you really got to get out of judgment and start, I call it maybe playing with the idea and the concept, and then allowing it to start to develop for yourself. But there is a process here, and it really does require an openness to doing this level of channeling.
Amazing. So every sentient being is a form of energy, and energy can be connected with other like energy or unlike if you're open on both ends. So if you want to talk to that tree in your yard that maybe isn't doing well, you would be able to connect and say, what is it I can do to make your life better so you're a healthy tree? I could understand that, but it would take some time to be able to accept that that's possible and to do it.
I don't think I could do it unless if I was not already working with my higher self, which started, back in 89, and making those connections, and then having the belief I could do this. Like the animal communication didn't happen until 96 when Hermes came through. And since then, I just taken it and worked with it more and more. And I talk about that a lot in my book, The Spirit of Alchemy. I'm currently working on a book now, which is all about how to tap into the consciousness of all these different sentient beings. There's just been so much insight I've gained and work I've done. Now, here's a fun fact. So here I am talking to trees. I started that about 10, 12 years ago. And it just kind of happened serendipitously. I'm going to call it synchronistically. It started happening where the trees started communicating with me. And you guys all know how when you want to just hug a tree or sit by a tree, or you feel the plant, or people say, I talk to my plants. There's science to that. There's this gentleman who wrote this book, and somebody told me to read it, and I was reading it, and it was amazing. He's talking about how plants, he's a PhD scientist who says plants they communicate to their fellow plants. The trees will talk to other trees. And he talked about how they do it. And the trees were already telling me, he said, we have our own World Wide Web. You guys call it the internet. Ours is in the ground. We use the root system reaching into Mother Earth. Mother Earth is our World Wide Web, is our net. And this guy talked about the mitochondria of the dirt in the dirt and the earth, and how their roots reached out to their saplings, and that reached out to every other living being in that vicinity. And even those plants that were connected elsewhere could be miles away. because they're the same species, or they're species that live together. And he's talking about how they do communicate to each other. And I was like, wow. Again, this is nothing new under the sun. Science is starting to talk about this. The native cultures have done this forever. And one time we were talking, this is fun. One time we were talking, my board partner and I were talking to buffalo. Buffalo is one of the most sacred animals, of course, of the Native American culture in North America. But I love the buffalo. That's one of my favorite big animals. So we were talking, we brought in the consciousness of buffalo, and it's kind of like you talk to an oversoul. I'm talking about advanced Ouija. I'm talking about advanced channeling now. So we brought in this oversoul, and the oversoul was communicating about the buffalo, and the buffalo spoke very similarly to how the native cultures would speak, very direct and very poetic and beautiful. This is what the buffalo said. Here's the gist of it. We will gladly lay ourselves down and give of our body freely to those native kinds of yours in your world. The grass will gladly lay itself down for us to give of its body for our nourishment. There's a cycle of life. It speaks so beautifully like that. That's that type of animal. Not all animals speak that way, but I was really impressed with how the buffalo really sounded so wise. And just amazing how you could hear a Native American elder speak.
Oh, that's just, man, that's beautiful. That's incredible.
It is beautiful.
Wow. I want to go back just a little bit to something you said about using the spirit board is a little bit like, how we use the internet now, but it was long before the internet. And it struck me that in some ways it's an internet for spirit. It's been there forever. And when you start using it, you're doing the dial-up speed, and it's taking a while to get a message across. Those of us who are old enough to remember dialing up a modem, and it would take forever to connect to the internet. But channeling would be more like, okay, you've got this direct, the internet is flowing fairly quick, correct? So the spirit board, for someone who would like to tap into their higher self, it would be a little bit of a slow process to start with the spirit board, because you're only getting a bit and a piece here and there of data. But if you work with it and open up like you have, then the messages start flowing a little more freely and quickly. Is that what you're saying? And is that something you would advise to anyone who would like to start with the spirit board, to not expect quick answers when they first start out?
Yeah. And I liken the spirit board to my great cosmic phone, because I've learned over the years it's no different than, taking my phone like this and being able to communicate through a dialing system, punching in the numbers, hitting a frequency through the wireless technology, and then making that connection. And then we have an infrastructure of towers and the frequency of bandwidth to connect within. So very similar. So I tap into certain frequencies of energies, and I do it through my intentions. So it's old school technology working in a very modern way, because now we become the technology yourself when you start to channel. You are the technology. You work on your own vibration. You work on your own centeredness. You work on your own sacredness. You work on your own protection, your ability to be within yourself, to make that connection, and your openness to allow that connection to happen, which is what channeling is. No matter what kind of channeling you do, whether it's mediumship, psychic readings, tarot cards, voice channeling, transmediumship, crystal ball scrying, any kind of talking boards, I Ching, the ruins. It's very much the same way. You start developing your system and you start reaching into these other dimensions to bring forth the messages. Now, people may not describe it the exact same way, but I can tell you that's what you're doing. You're just opening yourself up to these other dimensions, and you're doing it in a very reverent, respectful way, which allows you to start receiving the messages. And in this case, it displayed on the planchette and the board. Now, when I work with the board, it's a very automatic thing, because I've gotten really good at using it. And it's not easy. Now, that's what Diane's talking about here. I can sit down with somebody new using the board, and it won't work that well, because we need to dial up our connection, make our frequency match, make that connection so we can reach into these other dimensions together. Because now it's not just me alone, or it's not me with my other board partner who I work really well with this board. And we can move like really fast and get the messages like, like this. And you could see me doing that on my YouTube channel. If you look up my name, Karen A. Dahlman, you can watch some videos on that. But so it's always a matter of, I call it fine tuning the frequency. It's like turning the dial on that radio knob until you get a sound or a song, and then you hit that frequency and you're there. But we have to do it together with partners. I have to do it myself to match the frequency I want to communicate with. And there's always this level of free will. Now with the radio, you turn to it, the radio doesn't go, oh, I'm not gonna let you hear me today. You hit that frequency, you're there. Where sometimes the energies are like, I got nothing to say. I don't want to communicate like this. It's not what I do, and they won't meet you there. It just depends. I got to say, I've had really great responses though, once I made the connection with my higher self, because now I'm in a space of doing this sacredly and reverently with my own energy system. And I'm the tool, the technology that taps into other realms. And I find that's the gate, that's me in my world. That's my gateway to be able to make these other connections and make them really positive. So that's part of the reason why I've always had very positive experiences too, because I go through this, the divine being that we all are, which is myself, which is really a piece of source. I am source, your source, we're all source. I allow that piece, which is my higher self, to make the connections. You see, there's a little different there than just me, the ego. Oh, let's use the Ouija board. There's a very reverent thing that I've developed over the years to get myself in that space. So that's channeling. And when people do their own mediumistic or like psychic kind of work, I'm talking about too, they get in that space, and we all do different things to get there. And that's what makes it sacred, allows you to make that connection. But again, I'm just going to point out that it is a slow process. It very much can be if you start with this tool, because you've got to get used to using these frequencies, these energies in this manner. It's not super easy at first. However, saying that, I do meet people every now and then, and I was one of them, but I was also 8 when I started, that can take this board right out of the box and get good results and just start getting great messages. That's far and few in between. It's rare I'll meet somebody like that, but I have. So don't let that hold you back if you want to use this tool. And we can also talk about how to use it and how to get better results. But I'm telling you, for me, what really has happened and helped me the most and make these great leaps and bounds is connect with my higher self first.
So in a sense, one would want to probably meditate before they are going to seriously work with the spirit board and call in those higher energies that only the love and light present itself, correct?
Yeah, meditation's great. So I've developed this whole series. My series works like this. I have a breathing exercise, and then it's in my books, where I call it hips to heart. It's about getting grounded in your hips into the ground. So there's the earth aspect, and then bringing the wonderful energy of love vibration into your heart. And I teach how to do that and how to breathe it in and out. So you start making this connectivity through your heart to the ground. So there's this movement that goes like this, and that allows you to open up. But I find you got to be in your heart first. So I teach that. That's critical, I think, to any of this work. When I even teach people how to get into their higher self, it's always through the gateway, the portal of the heart. And you've got to think about this, you guys. They call the heart, and heart math, if you guys know about heart math, talks about this. They call the heart our little brain. And they say our heart actually has receptors in cells that mimic the brain, and it actually feels and knows things before the brain can even register it and respond. It's this heart feeling. You go, God, I just know. I just feel it. It's in my gut or it's my heart. I just know it. That is the heart. That's the registering of this whole area here, where it's like, I know we can call them chakras, energy centers. Our heart is our center chakra, right? Through all the different 3 below, 3 above. There's more chakras than that, but I'm talking the basic chakra system. That is where we do this work. So I find a way to connect people first there. Then I do this circuitry exercise, which has to do with holding hands, right and left, balancing polarity. I mean, I teach all this at my workshops. It's a lot, but then we do that. And then I say an intentional prayer. Now, why do I do that? Because I want to help raise the vibration of what we're doing here, take it from the regular everyday life to more of the sacred life. And so to enter that space, I state this prayer, which takes us into elevating our frequencies. People come to my open message circles. We all get to the same level of like, we want to make these great connections. And then I state the centeredness, the love and light, the whatever protection, the bubble, however we visualize it. I change my prayer a little bit each time I say it, because it depends on what the mood is that day and who's with me in those sessions. But I find that those three things, the breathing, grounding, the opening the heart, that's one. The circuitry exercise, grabbing my partner's hands, just connecting that way. And three, saying this invocation or intentional prayer helps me make those connections. And then boom, right away it opens, because that's where I am with it. And then away we go, and the guides come through. They're always the first group of beings that come through me every time when I'm working this board.
So let me bring up one thing. Over the years, I've had some exposure to the Ouija board, and anecdotally, I'll say that we received one as a gift one Christmas. I was in my teens. And, at the time we thought it was just a game and you could play with it. And if two of us worked the planchette, we would get messages. And my mom picked it up and thought she would play with it by herself. And she was able to get messages fairly quick. And she would ask interesting questions. And one turned into a prediction that came true later on about a tragedy. It was a tragedy that happened. It then scared her. And so she took the Ouija board and said, who is giving me this message? And the response was not what you would call hopeful, helpful, or healing. It sounded like something evil. And she threw the whole thing out. She would have nothing to do with it. So over time, when I would hear about the spirit board, there was this conception that it was calling in evil spirits. So perhaps in a sense, if someone was a little more attuned to what it can do and not expect bad things are going to happen, it could work out better. But how do you get someone to think about it in a positive way and not be afraid of what might be coming in, and not reject some of that beautiful, hopeful, helping feeling and messages that are coming in?
Yeah, well, the spirit board, talking board, Ouija board, they are tools. And we get to choose how we use the tools. And it really does. And this tool, because it is like old school, and there's no electronics attached to it, you are the technology. And so you really have to check yourself. And this is a tool you can get enlightening, exciting, wonderful, incredible guidance and messages. But once we have that fear, or we've been told that this tool is only bad and evil, then, it's going to do a mind trick on you, which will affect getting some negative stuff or energies. I've seen this with people all the time. I just love this tool because it's been so helpful for me. But it's like you really got to get beyond those fears for yourself. And how I see it is this: I call it a tool. All these ones behind me, I have some wooden ones, masonite, compressed particle board, and cardboard. Like this one over here is just cardboard. This one's masonite. This is compressed particle board. This one is same. This is really wood. I've got a variety of different kinds. And I say, am I afraid of wood with numbers and letters on it, or cardboard? No, I'm not. But we can make ourselves afraid of anything. And therefore, when you're afraid, you tend to attract more of that energy to you. So this tool is not for everybody. Just like maybe having a gun is not for everybody, or maybe working with the I Ching is not for everybody, or scrying may not be. But this is the one that gets the hardest rap. And I think it's because, as a historian and collector, and looking back on the facts about when Ouija came out and how it was used and who used it, and how they marketed it. How they marketed it is really fascinating, because, like I said, when I got my box, it said, okay, here's some rules. Not rules. It said, here's some suggestions for use. Sit across from a person, either at a table or on your lap, preferably male, female. They start setting up all these little Ouija stations, we call them, superstition Ouija stations. One person asks questions, use it with a partner, wipe it off. They give you all these things that make it sound so mysterious. And it kind of is. Who really developed and created this board, it came out of the spiritualist movements. Actually, 1886, we saw it appear on the scene. And there was no understanding of how or why this works. At least when you would go to a medium who did mediumship readings or did these revivals where they brought through messages, you go, oh, that person has a connection to the afterlife and it wasn't so scary. Where this is like a tool. You mean I can do this myself in my house? It puts the onus of power back on yourself. And you start thinking, well, who am I to do this? I mean, there's part of that. There's a little psychological play here. The way it was marketed as a game. It was patent and trademark as a novelty item in games. And that's because back in the day, in the late 1800s, everything was sold from a novelty shop or a game company that created these things. And so it was always seen as a game. But how could a game talk to the deceased or the transitioned, So it just plays a mind game on you. Now, after saying that, Diane, I will say historically, there are stories, and some of them have gone to court, where people say they used a board and were told to do something heinous. Like there's stories that people killed somebody. There's stories that people maimed somebody or just did weird things. But the bottom line is this: we always have free will. When somebody gives away their power and says, well, the board told me to do it, that's a great excuse to get out of going to prison or jail. Trust me, it didn't work. They still got trouble. They still got in trouble for, they ultimately were the ones that caused the act. It's like saying the gun made me shoot that man. And we see all these killings all the time with guns going off in schools. It's horrible. Like in Nashville, that just happened. And so to say that the gun did it, no, we're going to say that person used the gun. So there's a responsibility when you use any kind of tool, and not to scare me like this is a bad tool. I have them all over my house, on walls, hanging out, different parts of my home. And because of my way I view them and how I really view myself, that I'm responsible for myself and what I do with the tools, or just how I live my life, that I don't put my power into these boards. To me, they're beautiful pieces of artwork, yet they can be a serious tool. So you really got to look at how you're going to look at them, how you're going to view them. Your mother was very talented. If she could sit down at the board right away and get messages and hear what's going on, it's not the board, it was herself. But what happens is a lot of times people go, oh, that's just too much to know. And then in a sense, that freaks them out. And when you start getting freaked out, you start saying, oh, well, that must have been evil, the devil, that or whatever negative spoke to me. And you start interpreting everything as negative. Because when we start getting messages, and I got to tell you, I've gotten them throughout my life that are pretty profound, it could be a little uneasy. It could be a little scary, to say the least. Now I've got to a place where I welcome them, and I'm just open to receiving nothing but positive. So you got to get in a different mindset. It's not a tool for everybody, but it really does take practice, and it also takes just shifting your paradigm of how you view this tool if you choose to use it. But then again, it's not a tool for everybody.
Wow, that's amazing. It just...
Oh, Diana, I do want to say one more thing. You can use this tool by yourself, okay? You really can. I'm not as good at using it by myself. I will use it, and it's a little harder. I might get broken sentences, or I'll get maybe one or two sentences. When I use it with a partner, and we're really jiving, and I've got that connection going, it's copious. It moves fast. I've got pages. I'm just turning pages after pages until it's done. When I say it's the guides that I'm talking to, or if it's one of my animals, or whatever I'm calling upon to come communicate. And after 50 years, it's like you start to develop a repertoire of the different energies. I call them energy signatures, and you can feel who's coming through. And that's the same when I channel. When I direct channel like this, when I feel the voices and the words coming through, and I put it into words, it's like I can go, oh, that's the guides. I know how they feel when they come through me. Oh, that's the cat. I know how my cats feel, or I know the different energies. You start to develop that, and that's not unlike somebody else who does certain kinds of readings when they do it without any tools. They're the tool themselves. But you can use it alone. It might take a little bit longer, more time at practicing using it. I have a lot of younger people who follow me, so I don't always recommend it to children. I think they can get obsessed with this tool. And what I mean by that is they want to get all their answers for life on this tool. That's not what this is about. Mm-hmm. And in fact, when you work with spirit guides, you will find they don't live your life for you. They're going to let you live your life. They're going to let you make your mistakes, but they're going to be there to cheer you on and give you some ideas, but they're not going to give you, oh, don't do that, do this. They may some stronger inclinations that you go, oh, that makes sense. I'm going to try that instead, but they won't live your life. So you start to develop, and you start to understand who and what it is you're communicating with.
Well, let's turn to a few questions from our audience. But let's see, we do have a question here.
Hi, Karen. Thank you.
Hi, Donna.
This is fascinating. Quickly, over 30 years ago, I got a Ouija board. I don't remember how or when or whatever. And the only thing that I remember in my mind is using it and got a message that was frightening. Now, this is long before I knew anything about protection prayers and, setting yourself up and doing everything you've explained so beautifully. And so I put it away, and it has been shoved in the back of a closet ever since. And it's interesting because at one point I thought I would throw it away, and I wasn't sure about that. So it left me with a really unsettling feeling. So my question is, and you were just addressing this, it's how we look at this board. And I kept thinking maybe I need to cleanse it, get the negative energy off of it, but it's maybe not the board's fault. It's my reaction to it. But that was one of my questions. And my other question is, I do use a pendulum, which I love. And I don't know if you could use the pendulum on your Ouija board, for letters and numbers and so forth. So those are just kind of the thoughts I had. Anything you'd have to add to that?
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you for bringing those 2 points up. Yes, it is how you view it. It's how you come about it. And by the way, pendulum's no different than using a Ouija board. I mean, different type of tool, but you're still tapping into the unseen dimensions, asking questions and getting answers. So that's why I'm very clear when I say this is just a form of channeling. The pendulum's a form of channeling. Now, I have a board, it's sitting up there, but I have other boards that are small and round, and they're Ouija board or talking board, spirit board, and planchette's really small. It's a little round circle about that big. And then you can also use it doubles as for a pendulum, which is really nice. So listen, Donna, you can make your own. You don't need to go buy anything fancy. I would do it in the form of a circle. Get your yes, no on there. Get your letters in there. This one has the alphabet going around like that. And you can, ask it, hold it. This is so cool. I just met a woman at the event I was at in Sedona where Diane and Susanne were as well. And she told me how she used her pendulum. And I've never used it this way because I'm just so good at the board. Okay. She used her pendulum she had all of her letters down on the Ouija board. And she said, is it between the letters A through G? Yes or no? Yes. Then she and then she put her pendulum over, it would go to one of those letters. So she found a system of shortening it so she could, but it still took a long time. The Ouija board's going to be a lot faster than pendulum, but they are the same premise in terms of your channeling, you're bringing through information, and you're getting information back. So this is the deal. And I'm going to say it again. And Donna, you made me think about it again. We really have to see ourselves as the tool. We ourselves are the sacred piece here. We are source. We have our heart. We have our ability to bring forth beautiful messages. And we also have free will to bring through ugly messages. I'll say this because Donna, again, you remind me about all these things. Thank you. So Donna, one of the things people ask me, they go, do you believe in evil? I believe that evil exists within our free will and choices we make. Is it free floating? No. But there are definitely energies out there that are not so positive. I mean, we have contrast, positive, negative, and any spectrum in between, so we can start choosing what it is through free will choice, what it is we want to gravitate towards or constellate towards us. So I see life that way. And I see also these tools that way. For me, they've been nothing but beautiful, but I've heard the stories. People freak themselves out and have scary things happen. I'm not here to discount that. I'm here to say, let's revisit this tool and let me help you see it in a whole new light. Because just like a coin, you have the tails and you have the heads. Which side are you going to fixate upon? And so you have that spectrum in between. Nothing's either, I love this. This is a quote by William Shakespeare. Nothing's neither good nor bad, but thinking makes it so. So I'm glad you're thinking about that way, Donna. And there may be an opportunity to pull this tool back out and use it with your pendulum or use it with the planchette and see it renewed. But having said that too, like you hit on it too, it's, getting in a sacred space. What do you need to do that? And it could be saging, bringing out the crystals. It could be purifying yourself. For me, I said breathing and doing this meditation prayer I do. And then also, bringing the light, the love through my heart, and also circuitry exercise. So I'm bringing to any kind of work I do in the other dimensions, I'm doing these same things. So if you already have your own practices in place with something else you do, bring it to the table. Don't throw out the baby with the bathwater. Don't you have to start fresh. Bring what works for you to this tool. And if that you get success elsewhere using those beliefs and those practices and rituals and the way you raise your vibration and protect yourself, bring it here because it's going to help as well. Did I answer those questions, Donna?
Perfect. Thank you so very much.
Oh, you're very welcome.
Very helpful.
Great.
Thank you very much. I have another question here with Tracy. Pop in if you can unmute, Tracy. I'll read the question. Some of it you kind of covered, but I'll go ahead and read it. Some friends and I had an experience with the board back in 1987. We went to a Catholic school, and when we told a priest our story, he said not to trust spirits conjured from Ouija because they could be evil and we may not be able to get rid of it. Of course, we were young and naive back then, and we weren't trying for, nor did we believe the spirit that was communicating with us was evil. Yet we were so freaked out about the experience that we shut it down rather quickly. I'd be interested in learning how to use the board again, since you're teaching me that it's actually used as a positive experience. I definitely want to make sure to block negatives and dark entities, though. And are there different types of boards out there, or one in particular you recommend?
Nice. Okay. So a lot of people started when they were younger. So Donna talked about it too. Tracy, you're talking about it. Diane, you mentioned it. And I started when I was young as well. So that's usually our experience. Or in high school or college, we're drinking and acting stupid. You being jovial about it. That's not the place. But because it's marketed as a game, that places a psychological aspect. Oh, it's just a fun thing. And then you scare yourself. I never saw it that way. I never saw it as a game. I was so enamored by it. I was also so amazed. And I felt like it was sacred. To me, it was just so beautiful because there I was being able to connect with other realms, because Catholicism does teach about, guardian angels. We know that a burning bush spoke to Moses, got the 10 commandments. And I'm thinking, if a burning bush can communicate, people have guardian angels. Why couldn't I communicate through a piece of cardboard? God, source, all that is, universe, spirit, will communicate to us in the way that we're open to receiving. I just happen to be open to receiving through this tool. So think about it that way now. If you could start seeing it as it's a tool, again, you're the main tool. Anything you do in life, you're the main tool. The free will, the choice, how you're going to use your tool, how you're going to drive your car, how you're going to, I always talk about playing golf because I try to play golf and all these years, I'm still not better at it, but it's like practice. And it's also how I want to use my tools. Am I going to learn to do it, take lessons? Or am I just going to go out there and just willy-nilly throw my club around? If I shoot a gun, am I going to take lessons how to use the gun? What's my purpose of having it? So you got to ask yourself these questions when you have any kind of tool. My car, am I going to drive it responsibly, or am I just going to drive all over the road? You're going to follow the rules. So not that there's so much rules with the board, but intuitively, especially all of you who are studying with Susanne, there are ways to engage yourself with spirit. There's ways to prepare yourself to engage with spirit. Because it is unseen, it is unknown, it is a mystery. And because of those reasons, we just need to have our smarts about us. And so I say, use this tool in the same manner and prepare yourself for it. And this is another thing I'll say. Anytime you're feeling like you're getting anything negative, I have people write to me and they say, well, we got this, and then it said this, and it said explicitives, and then it cussed it, and then blah, 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 blah. I'm like, wait a second, you just told me you went on for about 15 minutes. Why'd you not just hang up the connection and say bye-bye? I will take a board, wipe it off and say bye-bye, you're done. This is when I was younger. I don't get that anymore because I see the tool as just an extension of my own ability to channel. So it changes as you start to view this tool very differently. So yes, you can pick it up and use it in a renewed way, but you've got to see yourself viewing it in a renewed way. When the Catholic priest or religion or even family members are telling you how evil and bad it is, That's really about their beliefs. That's where they are with it. Why can this bring through a devil or demon when a burning bush can't? Why do you call that a guardian angel when that could be something else? It's all about beliefs. It's all about how you view the world with your own filters. This does not have witches and warlocks attached to it, unless you believe it does. When your crystal becomes sacred, it's because you make it your own. You might have programmed it. You're willing to work with it, and then you can actually use it. Like I have this labradorite on, and this is a very powerful stone, and I like to wear it because when I channel, I feel like it opens up the higher energies. And so you use those things to help you, to augment you. And I'm saying when you use this tool, bring in those other items like Donna was talking about earlier. Let them help augment you and use this, and see this tool in a new light. It's just a tool. That's all. I could take these and rip them up and throw them away, and it doesn't matter. It's me. I'm the one that brought the energy to me. I'm the one channeling. See yourself as the powerful being. I call yourself the operator. You are the operating, sitting at the helm of using this tool. It's not the tool that does anything negative. It's ourselves, because we know no better. When we start learning to work with these dimensions, I'm not saying we have all the answers, but I'm saying when we start knowing how to work with ourselves, when we start exploring these dimensions, that's when it's a game changer. That's when everything changed for the positive. So yeah, I if you guys want to use this, I highly recommend. I mean, you could go to my website. I have all kinds of free articles about this, KarenADahlman.com. Go to my YouTube channel. I have 200 plus videos where I interview people that come on and talk about their own work, or I talk about the Ouija board and how to use it. So there's definitely ways to work with this. And I think after 50 years, I've cracked the code of working with this tool, and seeing it as just a tool. Again, my great cosmic phone that allows me to connect with consciousness of sentient beings. That's what you can do with this.
Okay, thank you. Let's have one final question. Sherry Brown has one that looks like it's interesting. Sherry, would you like to come in and ask your question? Hi.
Did I do it?
Yes.
You did.
Hi, Sherry. You did it.
Hey, I'm trying to think of my question. I think it was, what do we say, like with intention, to prevent the negativity from not coming in and invite the positivity in? Is there a prayer? What do we say?
Boy, you just said it right there. In a way, it's make it your own. This is what I do, and I'll give you an example of what I say. And remember, I've been making these connections forever, and the guides have been coming through since '94. So we've got that 30-year already established where it's just every time. But when I first started, especially being young, it was really a matter of learning how to sit there at the helm of this tool as the operator and asking for that which I want to connect with. So this is what I say now. I say, dear God, Goddess, universe, spirit, all of our angels and all those that are with us who have our best interests at heart, I invite you to the sacred circle where we are protected in love and light, and only those which come from that space, that dimension of love, light, best interests, and want to share guidance, inspiration, wonderful things that can help me and the people here gathered on our journey forward. I say something like that. I state it with my intention. I mean it. And by the way, I just went up a few octaves. I make sure I get that feel. Oh, I got it all the way up here. The guides are here. I can feel them. And they're like, you're calling us in. I'm like, yeah, I kind of am. I just did. So that's how quick the connection can happen. It's very emotional. I felt, for me, I know when I do it right, this is my thing, and you might have your own. I get these chills, and then I feel this beautiful warmth, love, go all the way up, and then it opens, it blossoms, and I can feel it. And it gets me very centered. And then I know I'm ready. So I wait till I get to that place. But you can create your own prayer, your own statement. I find that statement, the spoken word, works well. And all the ancient cultures and the sacred texts talk about the spoken word. In the beginning, there was this word, it's that whole idea that the word is what creates. So our words have power, and they reverberate, and they go out there. And so just saying something positive like that. And here's the secret, you guys, you ready? I will use a statement like that before I go into business meetings, before I go to maybe an event and speak, so I can just channel directly. Because once I feel that wisdom come through me and that wonderful, beautiful love, it's a solid love feeling. When I feel that, boom, showtime. And that's how I feel on and off the board. So what I'm telling you, what I'm teaching here, really can apply on and off the board, any form of channeling. And when I show up to speak, like at an event, or to be on a show, or even go to a business meeting, because I have another company I run, I want to show up as my best person, as my best self. And so I tap into that, pull in the higher self, pull in the universal energy, rely upon it, bring it through my body. But all that happens through that intention. So get used to saying some type of, you could call it a prayer, a salutation, invocation, a statement that allows you to connect. And as I told you, and I feel it, went woo, woo, I just spiraled up, and now I'm in a great space. Not that I wasn't before, but it just took me to another level. And I know you guys, Sherry, I know you know what I'm talking about. I know you do. So it's just a matter of learning to bring that into you. And that in itself is all you need to do any kind of channeling work. Now, of course, you got to learn to hear it and receive it, but that's like 85% of it, getting in that space. Does that make sense, Sherry?
Right. Completely.
Great.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, you're welcome.
That's what I needed to hear. Thank you.
Perfect. Woo.
That was really wonderful. I know there's a lot more to learn about the spirit board. I think knowing the history of it is important if you want to take it seriously. It's a good idea to know what this is, why it is, and then how it works, and then move from there using your positive energy. Really appreciate everything, Karen. Is there anything you would like to close with for our members and those who will be watching this later on YouTube?
Two things real quickly. Well, three. One, I'm sorry, I'm very verbose because there's a lot to explain when it comes to this tool, because it is so nebulous at times. Okay, so that's one thing. Second thing is, here's a neat fact. So talking board, spirit board, Ouija board, not all boards are Ouija boards. And the reason why is because the Ouija board is a trademark patented name. That's a little bit of history. Hasbro owns it now. That's a true Ouija board right there, where this one over here is an angel board. But all boards are spirit boards or talking boards. Okay. The third thing I want to say is really what I shared today with you, and I'll say it again. I just want to reiterate it. It's not just to use on the board, it's to use with yourself in life. Have your best self show up whenever you can, or you need a little extra boost. Tap into your higher self. Find a way, as my guides call it, plugging into the outlet, like taking your cord, plug it into an outlet of the higher self and make those connections. Because ultimately you make that connection, you will show up as your best self. You will navigate life. I can't say life's going to be easy, but you'll navigate it with a little more ease and a little more fluidity. And that's really what I'm talking about here. The board has become a teaching tool or a metaphor for you to find your greatest self and to tap into it and use it within your life. And I wish you all such a wonderful rest of this week. And thank you for joining us here.
This is Susanne Wilson, thanking Karen A. Dahlman and Diane Calderon. If you like this kind of content, be sure and subscribe. Thank you for supporting Carefree and Conscious.